It's my great honor to introduce Mike Church, conservative talk show host, author, producer. I have all his DVDs. I'm going to show them, every one of them, I'm going to show them to my tea party, and we're going to learn a lot. So it gives me great pleasure. Please introduce Mike Church.
Well, what a wonderful crowd. So great to be in a packed house. I'd like to thank my friend who's here somewhere, Dr. Greg Brannon. Oh, there he is. Greg, stand up. For making this possible. And as Diane said, thank all of you for coming out. If you don't know, I host a radio show on a channel that Mark Levin is actually on. And very famously, 2 years ago, I was among those kooks. We engaged in what was a spirited debate on one side of the issue, was our side, where we referred to him as sir, and gentleman, and sir, and where he referred to us as, "Get off my show, you big dope!" "Those nullifying kooks, they're going to tear this country apart!" That was what we were greeted with when we presented what the equivalent of resolves were 2 years ago to Mr. Levin. And it's amazing how when an idea starts gaining public acceptance, how today's fake conservatives all of a sudden find love for it. Why? Because it's good business. Article 5 Amendment Convention books sell. 3 years ago it was anathema, it was the end of the Republic, and today it is our salvation. And as Diane said, and she's reflecting what Patrick Henry said in the Virginia Ratifying Convention, you have about as good a chance of getting an Article 5 Amendment Convention as you do of having President Obama see his own doctor. So, nullification, why we're here today. We're here in North Carolina, one of my favorite states. I had to look up why it was called the Tar Heel State because I had forgotten and I couldn't find one solitary remedy, so figured I'd tell another story, and that's about the Lost Colony. How many of you remember the Lost Colony from your history books? Well, Lost Colony disappeared in 1590. It was the first English settled colony here in North Carolina, and when Sir John Smith came back looking for his peeps, he couldn't find them. No sign other than something written on a tree called Croatan. So no one knows where the Lost Colony went. I did a little research on this, and I think I found out. They were visited by an Indian fortune teller who told them that if they stayed there, their heirs would live under something called Obamacare. And so they left. Don't clap too much. The Indian wasn't very good beyond that because where they fled to was Cuba. I'm here all night. You probably all read the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions or resolves, right? You probably also have heard or have read that the principal authors are, as Diane said, Thomas Jefferson and one James Madison, who I will lovingly refer to hereafter as Little Jimmy Madison, because he was about Diane's size. I think actually you would be his superior. There's a third party involved in this story, and his name is John Taylor of Caroline County. John Taylor gets very little credit, and there's a reason why, because if you think Jefferson's ideals and ideas are dangerous to Big Brother and Leviathan and big government, well, Taylor was who inspired Jefferson. So Taylor is Jefferson on steroids. And just like with any other history story, there's always a backstory that's equally important. And that's what I'd like to share with you a little bit about today. And in the case of nullification and interposition, backstory involves three men: Jefferson, Taylor, and Madison. And the inspiration for what we know today as nullification and interposition did not come from those three men. So if I leave here today and I teach you one thing, it's that. It came from the citizens of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Wait till you hear the story. You'll really be saying, whoa! Our story begins in May of 1788. The Adams administration is agitating to pick a fight with the French. At this juncture, this comes as no surprise, seeing as how the Adams cabinet was filled with the 1798 equivalent of John Bolton, John McCain, and Dick Cheney, in the persons of James McHenry, Oliver Wolcott, and Timothy Pickering. The alien law that was first proposed in the United States Senate was so vicious that it even offended Hamilton. Here's what it said in part. Quote, "The Sedition Act made it felonious and punishable with a fine of $5,000. $5,000 when they were backed in gold. That's about $2.5 trillion today. 5 years imprisonment for persons to combine in order to impede the operation of any law of the United States or to intimidate persons from taking federal office, heaven forfend, or to commit or advise a riot or insurrection or unlawful assembly. It also declared that the writing or publishing of any scandalous, malicious, or false statements against the President or either House of Congress should be punishable by a fine of $2,000 and imprisonment for 2 years. So, it was a $2 trillion fine. Now, while the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents of George W. Bush and Nancy Pelosi worked on toning their Sedition Act down, Thomas Jefferson got wind of what was going on. He was a very prolific writer, as you probably know. Writing to Madison on April 28, 1798, he tells Madison what he thinks is going on. Quote, "Mr. Parker is completely gone over to the war party. In this state of things, they will carry what they please. One of the war party, in a fit of unguarded passion, declared some time ago that they would pass a citizen bill, an alien bill, and a sedition bill. Accordingly, some days ago, Mr. Court laid a motion on the table of the House of Representatives for modifying the citizen law. Their threat points at Gallatin, and it is believed that they will endeavor to reach him by this bill." Now, of course, when I talk about Thomas Jefferson and I talk about Alexander Gallatin, who knows who Alexander Gallatin was? Probably very few of you. There's another good reason for that. This will illustrate how perverted the Sedition Act and the Alien Act was in the whole chain of events, okay? Jefferson referring to Albert Gallatin. Gallatin is quite possibly the most patriotic and prolific immigrant in the history of the United States. What did he accomplish? Well, listen to this. Gallatin was elected to the United States Senate in 1790, kicked out of the United States Senate because he was allegedly not naturalized long enough. Okay, he went back to his state, Pennsylvania, was elected to Congress. And while there, he worked with little Jimmy Madison on the arcane art of, now check this out, withholding the purse from acts passed that he did not believe were constitutional. He was the longest-serving Secretary of the Treasury, and he hated Hamilton. Need I say more? So, this is who Jefferson thinks Adams wants to make an example of. Back to Jefferson. Yesterday, Mr. Milhouse laid on the table of the Senate a motion for giving power to send away suspected aliens. Now, folks, when I say aliens, I don't mean little green men with antenna. What they're referring to as aliens are immigrants. Well, back in the day before we became the people that we are, we used to like immigrants. Not all of them, but certainly the ones that were welcomed in, like from countries that helped us beat the British, from France. That's what all this is about. This is understood to be meant for Volney and Calotte, but it will not stop there when it gets into a cause of execution. There was only now wanting to accomplish the whole declaration before mentioned, a sedition bill, which we shall certainly see proposed. The object of that is the suppression of the Whig presses. If these papers fall, republicanism will be entirely browbeaten. Now, when Jefferson says republicanism, he does not mean George W. Bush. He does not mean Bob Dole, and he certainly does not mean Senator Lindsey Graham. What he means is lowercase, little r Republican. Back in 1798, you couldn't swing a dead possum without hitting someone that was saying the word Republican with a little lowercase r. It's what the United States is founded upon. Now, this is before what you call the founding, what we call the founding. We were always Republican. The colonies were Republican, meaning they had governments that were very close to the people that they had direct control over. This is how Jefferson explained it later in his life. If you have direct action on your government, that's a Republican form. That is the most desired government on earth, save for, you'll be shocked by this, monarchy. Monarchy does have benevolent uses, and has had benevolent uses. We just saw an epic in America, in the United States, that we didn't like that king and didn't think he was benevolent anymore. So a little bit of an explanation about that. So Jefferson gets wind of what's going on in the Adams administration, and he is not the only person that's alarmed at what the 6th Congress is doing. So they had the same problems that we have today. The idea that we can't fix them is just preposterous. One of the reasons I bring it up. 6th Congress. Word of their tyranny, and this is what alarmed citizens called it then, here in the U.S., tyranny, spread back to Virginia faster than an Obamacare website shutdown. Now, remember that this is happening in Philadelphia, so it takes a little while for those letters to get back. What happens next is probably only known to the official historian of Fredericksburg, Virginia, and you lucky people here today.